move on now to what promises to be a very interesting panel discussion. It is the HRTech panel titled Leveraging Technology to Build a High-Performance Culture. And it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce the members of the panel first. Sheenam Ohrie, Vice President, Enterprise Data Mobility and Engineering CIO Leader, Dell, India. Ruchi Anand, Director, Talent Solutions and Learning Solutions, India, LinkedIn. Pramod Agrawal, VP and Regional Chief Technical Officer, Automation Anywhere. Shaakun Khanna, Head, HCM Strategy and BD, Asia Pacific, SaaS Strategy and BD, India, Oracle. Jitendra Singh, Chief Information Officer, JK Cement. And this panel will be anchored and moderated by Feroz Khan, Partner and Leader, Digital Advisory Practice, KPMG, India. Feroz, over to you.
Thanks, Ivan. Thanks, and let's start this interesting, panel discussion. So, thanks. You have already introduced my eminent panel members. So, I will, not do that. In fact, we'll jump onto the topic. So, I was just going through this topic, which talks about that how do we really leverage technology to build a very high and robust culture in terms of a next generation or the new ways of working. So very interesting, topic. And if we see the post-COVID environment, it has given us all the reason to think about that. How do we really become more reliant onto technology? How do we really support, the organization, support the workforce, support the people, support the system in this post-COVID environment? And thus, everywhere we'll see that there's a new buzzword which has come, which is remote working. People talk about remote working. People talk about how do we collaborate remotely, and this is the new normal which has come up. And if we see underneath this, it's dependent upon the underlying technology, which is very important. And this technology does not only talks about the mobility or the application, but the entire ecosystem, which starts from be it network to data center to infra to enterprise solution to digital, many things. So underlying technology has to be really strong for this. And if we see a type of a trend, there are different trends which are there, in the market. And when I talk about a couple of the trends, so trends like globalization, trends like mobility, these are something which are forcing to think in a different way. These are a trend which are, giving a hint that we need to embark onto a different journey to create a different experience in terms of building a high performance culture. And if we just take an example of the millennials thinking, if we see the millennials workforce, there are data points which tells that by end of 2020, at least 50% of the global workforce would be the millennials. And by end of 2025, this will, reach to close to 75%. And see the thinkings what they have. These are the digital native guys. Are the people. And they think very differently. So how do we really leverage these mindset to create a high performance culture? But then we have to really enable that with different technologies. And the role of technology, if I talk about, there's different roles. So, we have seen that in terms of technology, there are various things which is being leveraged. So the so-called the big data of the world, there are variables, which we talk about. There are different collaboration tools, what we talk about, Internet of Things, cloud computing. So many things which are creating this new normal. And this is helping us to be more engaged and more productive. And thus, truly feel like the technology would be something which will be acting as a certain, central nervous system for this entire change. Now, seeing all these things, there's a question which keeps on coming, and I thought, let me discuss with the, my panel members and take your perspective, your views, that how have you really helped it solve this problem specifically in your organization. So let me start with picking a brains from you people, and let me start with Jitendra. So Jitendra, because I have heard, it was my pleasure to work with you in different capacity, with JK Cement during my consulting, tenure. And I heard a lot like you guys have really embarked onto different digital and technology interventions, which leapfrogs into a different level of experience, the employee experience. So let me understand from you, Jitendra, like what are the different interventions which you have taken, which has helped you enable this, a new ways of working in your organizations. And I would like to hear that. How did you really tackle it? How do you really, implement it in your organization? So yeah, Jitendra.
Very nice point, actually, and very nicely put also, Feroz. See, what happens is, being a manufacturing industry, that to a cement manufacturing industry, the mindset becomes one of those major areas which has to be won before you introduce any technology there. So this was a kind of a parallel journey wherein techno-functional journey was taken up. And we essentially started our cloud journey, making things online, enabling our workforce, which of course your team was also involved very heavily into it. And then making this consultants from foreign countries looking at our plants and repairs and maintenance using the AR. So these were certain areas wherein we started our journey before COVID. And this was with an intent that in next 3 to 4 years, we'll be a digitally enabled manufacturing organization wherein only the necessity-based presence of a physical aspect will be taken care of. Rest will be all digital. But I must actually now, this looks like a very contradictory point, but I must now compliment COVID for this. It has actually hastened the process, which is now actually forced people to think upon that if things can work on in these 3 months, which is April, May, and June, and that too much more effectively than what we were earlier, why can't we actually speed up our digitalization journey? Number one. Second is, earlier interacting with people over a video conferencing was not considered as a remote working. Actually, you had to have some space wherein the VC equipment was installed, and then the other side also had used to have a room. And in terms of ubiquitous computing, there are certain hiccups wherein people would still apprehensive of, which is now gone. In fact, with these Microsoft Teams, with the Zooms of the world, with the WebEx of the world, what has happened is that people have now realized that yes, these meetings can happen much more effectively, and at any point in time, you do not need to actually physically move to a space and then ask for the appointment, and then you need 2 more people, like executive assistant to executive assistant, talking to each other, booking their times. You feel like whenever you feel like, you can actually pick up your device and start interacting with the other person. Then what happened was conducting meetings across various places. So the travel time and the travel cost is also drastically reduced. Which is, I say is reduced, because now in future what will happen is, my leadership team has already realized that you don't need to call in every person from every side for a meeting. This can happen virtually. Then there was one piece wherein going to the market is an essential piece for any organization when it comes to sales and marketing. During these last 3 months, what we've done is we've quickly enabled e-visit module, wherein using the call and logging on those calls is actually enabling my workforce to connect with the dealers, communicate with them, not only on the professional grounds, but on the personal grounds as well, asking about their well-being and other things, which has established a better connect. And that, in fact, yesterday itself in our board meeting, it is already visible to everybody now. The results are very, very promising. So during these times wherein virtually all businesses are going into slightly on a dip side, we are doing good. So this is one area wherein we could do very good things. Third is augmented reality. When I spoke about, people sitting in Sweden can actually look at my plant and pinpoint the position that where it needs to be placed, how with the use of the Epson glass and the TeamViewer pilot thing. So with the use of this augmented reality thing, things have become really effective. My projects are not on hold because the person is sitting somewhere in different country and they cannot travel. That's also one more thing. And then what has happened is, because of this COVID also, the risk mitigation exercise also called upon or eliminating the use of paper altogether, which has also hastened up the exercise of going digital. Now, every site, every person is looking into an opportunity of how can we automate things and reduce or eliminate. Reduction in cases wherein we have the statutory and regulatory requirements, which still would require some kind of a paper to be signed off, but that will be at the last stage. So that automation practice has also started. And in fact, just to give you a very good example, recently we've had an environmental clearance meeting on digital platform only with the government agencies, and the entire exercise was done virtually itself, and it was successful enough. So, which required too many people to travel to the EC Commission and then present our case and then discuss it time and again. And now this is not required anymore. So, these are the areas wherein the COVID or the pandemic has actually forced us to speed up our automation journey. Second is start thinking about digital initiatives in much more effective fashion. The change management is really, really smooth today compared to what it was, because we had to justify the case. Now it has actually pragmatically proven its case. So that's the difference which has taken place. My leadership team is aligned with the thought, and we'll see maybe what was planned for next 3 years. Maybe in a year's time, it should be done and dusted.
Great. So, you brought out a very important point, Jitendra. In fact, I have taken a note of it. Definitely, I would like to share this with others also. So, you brought in a perspective that digital, which is the new ways of working, that has helped your organization a lot in terms of achieving this. You spoke about automation journey, like this has really speeded up the process. And very interesting thing, what you spoke about is the markets, the sales and marketing. So how did you leapfrog the, using different digital techniques in terms of making sure that the sales and marketing comes as a business as usual? You even spoke about the concept of an e-visit module, which is a very interesting thing. And the most important thing which I took a note of it is the augmented reality part, which is going to give a different perspective, different experience altogether. So this takes me to a thought process that how is it that the product companies or a platform companies help in order to enable this? And I would like to go to Shaakun, because Shaakun, you coming from Oracle, I can correlate this with Oracle, that how it is possible in your your organization. And then specifically when we talk about business as usual, specifically when we talk about the continued business process and the operations, when we talk about different individual performance measurement, the new ways of working, how do we really measure those performance? So what, as per you, are the 2-3 areas wherein you would have seen that the HR leaders need to do something, need to focus on to area which really enables it with the help of technology? And what is it which Oracle doing into this space? Because you have suite of offering in terms of product, platform, services which can help enable this. So yeah, Shaakun, would like to hear from you.
Sure. Feroz, thank you so much. And I think very interestingly at Oracle, we use everything that we sell in the market or propagate in the market, and we use it a couple of versions ahead of time, because that's what we are able to do. Truth be told, that over the last 100 days or so, I have not visited office. In fact, I am not even working from my usual city of residence. I decided to come to my holiday home and be here. So I'm on an extended holiday during the lockdown. And the good news is that there is not even a single transaction that we are not able to do. It would include more complex tasks like transfers. I did recruit a person in my team during this time. So the entire process of opening a rec and getting the person onboarded, including the delivery of hardware possibility, and also the kind of experience we want to give. So for example, we do offer new hires to choose the laptop model that they would want, right? Now, in scenarios like this, one would expect that at least those kind of choices would have to be curtailed or compromised. Not with us, right? Because the whole thing is pretty much meant to be working. Now, since we are the technology company that we are, we had an advantage because we were always working from home as a matter of general practice, and from the word go, our systems were meant to cater to the entire population with the entire transactions. And I think that's the important answer to your question, Feroz. A lot of times, pre-COVID era at least, CHROs focused on solving point problems. Let me fix my candidate experience problem. Let's talk about the recruitment module. Or this year, my focus is to take performance management digital, and so on and so forth. Now, that's not an approach that is relevant, and that also rendered a lot of organizations not being future ready in this kind of a scenario. Because if you don't have one single model where everything is seamlessly integrated and ability to deliver everything, is not going to work. We did prepare a technology roadmap where we thought that part of the things people will do on their mobile devices, part of it they will finish from home. And then, of course, in 2 or 3 days, when they come back at home to the office, they'll be able to finish the transaction. Not anymore. We have to have a technology strategy where everything can be done from anywhere in real time and across any device. That's one point. The second very interesting point that I realized when I was struggling with the bandwidth issue, so I called up my service provider, which I would not like to name, but I said, hey, you know what? I'm facing some challenges with my bandwidth issue. So the first thing they told me that, you know what, sir? You got to switch off your VPN if you want a speedy connectivity. Now imagine, Feroz, the whole purpose of digitization is lost if as an employee, I'm stuck between the need to switch off the VPN because my data, the broadband vendor says that, versus need to be on a VPN because my security policy of the organization does that. And truth is that this VPN requirement is because somewhere the organization is not invested in the latest and the best technology. So I think that's the second important piece, and cloud is definitely the way. The last thing I would want to say here, and my apologies, I crossed the 1.5 minute limit, but this is very pertinent and important here, is silos will not work. We are right now still working in a zone where even the HR systems are siloed. But what I'm saying is now it has to be a siloless organization where HR system is seamlessly integrated into ERP. The ERP system is seamlessly integrated into the sales system so that there is one single source of truth and real digital experiences happening. You don't want your employees to feel frustrated with office systems when Amazons of the world and Netflix of the world are using the latest and the best technologies to give them the best seamless experience that they want. So those are the 2, 3, 4 things that I wanted to put. And the good news is technology is available right here, right now, today to deliver everything like this. Oracle is one such example where we are doing everything. And also, by the way, we have about 170,000 employees working across the globe, and all our employees, except for those who are really present at data centers because of very specific reasons, everybody over the last 100 days is working on from remote locations, and there has not been a single IT outage or single challenge that we have faced. So I think that's where we are.
So you brought in a very good point, and again, I took some note of what you spoke about. In fact, this I totally agree. Like if I talk about prior to COVID, CHROs were not focused onto a broader agenda. Instead, they were trying to solve the point solutions or point problem. Very, very valid point. And silo is something like earlier. There's a lot of things which used to happen in silo. That's another important point which you brought in. The most important thing which I heard from you, Shaakun, is this. You spoke about, anytime, anywhere type of a model of working, which is very true. If I talk about the trends which is changing this, entire ecosystem or changing the entire operating model, yes, mobility has become one of the most important thing. So anytime, anywhere working and any device working. So anytime, anywhere is okay. But when it comes to any device, that's also something which is the new normal, which has come up. You You want to share?
So I'm saying that there are two more dimensions getting added to that. Earlier, you alluded to the millennials and how the generational thing is playing. One of the things, and we've done a research around it, which I can circulate later, is that during this lockdown, a whole lot of people have picked up new behaviors and new traits, and they have evolved into a new generation altogether. And we are calling it the recalibrated generation or the reset generation, and we call it the Generation R. Now, Generation R could be you and me also, and millennials also, but we are behaving in a similar manner. So the three things that you mentioned, there are two more things. One, now people want to choose when they want to do what they want to do. And that's very important. People are willing to pick up roles that they have never done because they have been learning new things. And lastly, how much they want to work. This is the biggest new paradigm. And I think technology will play a very important role in defining. A lot of people have realized that they could relook at their lives. A lot of people don't want to work the way they worked. A lot of times they would want to work more, and therefore they would seek more roles or more opportunities even outside of work. Therefore, what kind of a talent marketplace that you have is important. And on the other hand, people may not want to work full time or the whole role. They may only want to work specific of a particular role, and therefore organizations will have to offer that. So I think those are the additional two dimensions that have got added to this complexity.
Very, very valid point. Very valid point. I have taken a note of that as well. And since you spoke about these 5 dimensions, and then you spoke about the need for eliminating the silos, and that sorts of and gives a hint that yes, automation can be one of the major element to this. So in terms of the success, yes, automation can also play. And since Pramod is there in this call, and Pramod comes from a automation anyway, which itself is a marquee name in terms of any type of intelligent automation. So Pramod, would like to pick your brains in this, that when we talk about different technologies, when we talk about reshaping the new org structure or the new operating model, definitely there are bound to challenges which is going to come up. Now, given the point that you come from an automation background, what are some of the challenges which you would have seen, and how did you really try to tackle it? So can you share some experience on the challenges? Because good things everyone talk about, but let's even understand the challenges and the risk which brings with that same offering. So yeah, Pramod.
Yeah. So thanks, Feroz. I think both Shaakun and Jitendra have, I think, beautifully articulated some of the trends we are observing. And in my role as the CTO, I get to observe this across many different organizations. Internally as well as externally, I think there is a common theme. I think just on the risk of reiterating, I think it is that from an employee perspective, it is a question of what is employees' expectations from the organization and how it is evolving in this hybrid work environment, right? And I think if you can sort of look into the future with a crystal ball, some of these things around more focus from a very fixed work environment to a contract work environment, how much I want to work, where I want to work from, I think they're going to certainly play out. But I think if you look at what is going to be underlying challenge for us as technology provider and for organizations as consumers is, how do you define that employee's experience with all the organizational systems, right? So whether you look at work hierarchies, right? So work hierarchies suddenly sort of melt away when you have most of the workforce working remotely, because the way the work was constructed from early 20th century based on assembly line model and factories to a very hierarchical organization, which made sense then and which continued. I think suddenly this new environment is making us realize that, look, it's possible to have work being constructed and organized very, very differently, right? With a much more flat hierarchy. So I think that's going to lead to completely different expectations. And in a very interesting way, I think this is going to mirror the way the whole economy has shifted from maybe hardware product kind of economy to a service economy to an experience economy, right? And when you just think about the experience economy, I think thinking about offerings of HR as a payroll system, as a benefit system, as a performance system, as a comp management system, to what is the employee's experience, what is managers' expectations, how do we meld and sort of deconstruct the definition of a work management software, a performance management software. How do you create it in a way where it is possible to offer that experience? And I think this is where you need flexible tools like automation, which can essentially look at these system of record systems, right? And I myself built PeopleSoft, knowing which is one of the, I think, the largest HR systems in the world. So, but I think that was then. I think now we have to really look at systems from an experience delivery perspective. And I think this is where this massive shift that has happened with COVID, where every organization has to realize that there is a workforce that's going to work from anywhere, right? And it's going to be beneficial for everybody in the ecosystem. So I think that experience economy is going to drive a lot of this, right? So we are seeing a lot of emergence of tools like conversational agents, right? And conversation agents had an extremely slow path of adoption. But suddenly in the last 3 months, conversation is everything, because you really want those frictionless experiences that you're dealing with in your other parts of life, right? Because now life and work are not two separate things. So your expectations are those same world-class, highly experiential tools, which are available to you for your day-to-day home or other experiences, to be available to the work also, right? So I think in that way, the challenges I think are about meeting this employee's experience in the way that these systems don't come in the way of getting the work done. Because when you're working from home, when you're not in a proper work environment, the least thing you want is a work environment constructed of multiple digital systems that is very hard to deal with, right? So I think in that way, I think this whole conversation and the way we are seeing emergence of tools and the adoption of tools, I think for the first time, I think the behaviors are driving technology. And it is not that the technology provider is going and pitching digital transformation, what is next generation. I think organizations like JK Cement are already driving those next generation behaviors, and tools may be about to beginning to be in a catch-up mode with that, right? So I think those are some of the things we are seeing with respect to these challenges.
Great point. So, you stressed upon experience economy, which even I agree to this, because this entire scenario has given a new, experience for everyone. And that's how I love telling this thing that earlier there was a time wherein people used to go for a work. Now people carry work with them. So given the mobility, if you see, everyone is carrying work wherever you go, no matter which place you are there. So you're carrying that work with. So there's a different experience altogether which has come up. And very well said in terms of the so you stressed upon the point that experience economy will drive this change. Now, having said that, yes, I do understand that, yes, this is very important. And specifically, if it is for an organization wherein the workforce is 5,000, 10,000, it's okay. But if the workforce is more than 100,000 people, how do you really bring this experience change? And that's how I would like to move to Sheenam. So Sheenam, I do understand you are from Dell. And in fact, I was taking a different session today only in a different panel. And there was a gentleman from Dell. And I never knew about this, that there are more than 100,000 people in Dell, to whom you have made and affected this change and this experience. So very, very, straight question to you, Sheenam, that how did you really do this, and that too for such a large workforce? So how did you enable this experience? Categorically, if I say from the work from home, because it's not only work from home, as I said, it's basically you are carrying work with yourself. So wherever you go, you are carrying work with yourself. So how did you do that? So let's hear from you on this.
Thanks, Feroz. I'm sure you were speaking to Venkat. I think he was there on the panel earlier. Interesting question, right? And interesting dynamics. I come from the Dell Digital organization, which is the IT organization, which is now enabling digital experiences. So everything that was said on this panel is something that I can really relate to. And when we decided, that as an organization, we will kind of move away from coming to work much before any of the lockdowns were in place, we decided that over a weekend, we'll kind of get everybody off coming to office and necessary to come to office. Most of the people, it was easy because, most of our people have laptops, and, we have enabled them with the ability to work from home. But you have people who are in shifts, who are in your contact center, and who really work from a desktop, who have a desk phone attached to their work profile. And these are the people who would need to come to office, and that's a huge number when you're talking about the kind of infrastructure and that we sell and the services that we provide. So we had close to 4,000 people that we had to enable over a weekend with laptops and with equipment and in the necessary infrastructure to be working from home. So one of the things that we did was we converted into Avaya soft phones. We did increase our VPN capacity 3 times. We actually installed a lot of firewalls. But the journey to work from home, or what we call as connected workplace at Dell, started much earlier for us, right? So we have close seamless experience, whether you're working on your mobile phone, you're working on your tablet, or you're working on your laptop, and actually allows you to take your work anywhere. Workspace ONE is also currently being used by over 75,000 mobile devices within Dell. So the entire process of connected workplace through technology was already much in the seams for us. So for applications which don't need VPN, where you don't need to get into the intranet and you don't need confidential information, we're already doing Workspace ONE. The other thing that we did was we started with installing SD-WAN, and this is something that we've done in the last 3 months. It was not something that happened over the weekend, but we started saying where you want to go into applications that are cloud-based applications. You don't need to hop across your network. So we installed SD-WAN. So a lot of technology got consumed. While that's one part of the journey, I think the second part of the journey is really the people. Suddenly, from insisting that everybody should be in office to do paired programming, we had our engineers all doing extreme programming, doing pair programming, sitting in the office, not telling them you don't need to come to work. Please be at home. How do you enable that shift in the culture? How do you enable productivity? How do you enable that people continue to deliver on the change that you have taken the organization through from a services kind of an organization that we were to a real product setup that we want to get to, and in a remote environment. So there was a lot of culture change, a lot of communication, a lot of connections that have been established, right? So we've created a whole communication strategy that ensures people feel connected to, starting from Michael to somebody like me to even lower. There is what kind of cadence that you want to have in communication. We've changed our meeting policies. Our meetings are no longer for an hour. It's 50 minutes. It's 25 minutes and 50 minutes. So give people time back, right? We also realized that there was a lot of Zoom fatigue happening. So we actually told people, you don't need to come on video, because earlier we were insisting, come on video, we want to see your face, we want to build the connections. We said, let's get rid of the Zoom fatigue, right? It's okay, go take a walk during one-on-ones. You don't need to see each other during a one-on-one. So those are kind of principles that we did. Lastly, what we are doing is, especially for people who are in the Asia Pacific region, right? And in India, our internet connections are not very stable. Our homes are not meant to work from home. So what kind of policies do we need to have to help our employees to get into this kind of a setup? Because we don't want our employees coming back to office till we have a vaccine available, till it is safe to be back outside. So in that kind of a scenario, we need to help our people have the right infrastructure at home. So what should be those policies? What should be those guidelines? What should those benefits be looking like is something that we are evaluating right now. So that's how we were kind of approached this entire thing.
Great. So again, multiple points which I took a note of it. So just to name few, like you spoke about a very valid point of shift in the culture, which is very important. So it's also correlated to the change management. Then productivity, again, that's an important statement. Communication, culture change. So these are the things which will play a very important role in terms of enabling this change. And be it such a large workforce or a small workforce, these are the things which would be important. Okay. And the other thing which, in fact, when I was hearing Shaakun also brought in a very important point of a new behavior. He correlated millennials thinking with new behavior. So this points to me a thinking process that new behavior, yes, definitely, with all these points like the communication, shift in culture, productivity, culture, the change, all these things if put together, yes, there's a new thinking which is coming up and new behavior which is coming out. So now, people like to collaborate and work on, the likes of the Facebook. People like to express their views on Twitter. People like to, share their professional histories on LinkedIn. People like to, communicate in a different way. And all these things are, seeing a different change. And thus, I would like to pick Ruchi's brain on this, because Ruchi, you are from LinkedIn, and specifically, if I talk about this new behavior, or if I talk about this new cultural change, LinkedIn plays an important role in terms of that collaborations. So if I have to come to you and ask you, like, what are the different shifts which you are seeing in various organizations? Because I'm sure you have data points, wherein you can do some analysis and say that. So in different organizations, how are you seeing that these organizations are leveraging different technology to engage people? Because the new normal is collaboration. The new normal is collaborate and communicate in a different way. And given the LinkedIn's presence into this space, so what's your views on this?
Absolutely. Thanks, Feroz, for the question. And I think the best part about going towards the end is, get to hear collective insights from all the panelists and, just kind of bring it home. It's probably, it could be a repetition of some points, but totally in agreement. And one thing I was thinking of, I was reminded of Satya's recent quote on, like, we've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months, right? So even to Jitendra Sir's point around, like, how fast this has enabled and, made things move. I think that is really a reflection of how fast and how quickly organizations have really pivoted towards a newer way of functioning, in these last few months. So to answer your question, Feroz, I'd like to break it down into like 3 phases, which I feel when I think about and we see what organizations are doing, and these 3 phases may not necessarily be linear. So, in terms of how organizations are leveraging technology to engage people, I would say, respond, recover, and reimagine. So when you talk about, of course, respond, I mean, the first thing, and we've just heard everyone actually talk about this, that use of technology, obviously at the core is to stay connected with their employees in the first place, right? And very important to be able to ensure that organizations are using technology to keep their spirits high and help them thrive, because there's so much of overwhelm that's happening at the moment. And what we are seeing as a shift specifically around like what was earlier to now much more is we're seeing organizations have much more frequent conversations with their employees through surveys to gather feedback on critical topics, and at a faster pace to see how they're doing, how are the things, what are things that are important. So it's also, I think what Sheenam also mentioned, like one example of changing meeting policies, right? So it's also helping people to be able to prioritize on what is important right now rather than do everything that they would have normally focused on. So how do you do that? And I think a ear to the ground is very important. And I'll link this back to Shaakun's point on, the millennials and really thinking about listening to them and being able to do that. So organizations are having frequent conversations. The other thing is also equipping their managers with insights to help them address these concerns, because the managers will play a very key role in terms of how the talent is being managed at this point of time. I think with all of this, what is also important is that how can organizations ensure that they can help preserve their company culture and enable productivity and grow together in these times. Then when you talk about recover, right, I would say it is really like, the shift, and I think again moving towards the use of data driven talent decisions that are being taken, which is whether to use talent insights to derive more on a broader level, what are the workforce insights, chart career paths for employees, for identifying areas where new skills are required, and which also in turn leads to a lot of internal mobility. And I'm sure that's being spoken about a lot. And when we talk about internal mobility, it really leads to the third phase, which I talk about, reimagining the way we are getting our talent ready, which is with upskilling and reskilling, which of course has seen a surge with online learning. Just to give you some numbers, recent LinkedIn research tells us that employees have been spending over 130% more time on learning since the pandemic. And in fact, not just that, the way organizations are enabling learning and embracing a culture of learning for their employees, we've seen that there has been a 346% increase in the number of course recommendations or learning paths that admins have been doing within the L&D teams for the talent at large. So this is really showing that how there's a resurgence and there's a shift and towards like really ensuring people are using learning not just to reskill and upskill, but also in a way to it's now become like a lifeline to help them keep this overwhelm at bay. I mean, to give you a sense, when we look at LinkedIn learning data, top courses apart from remote working, virtual collaboration tools, a lot is on mindfulness. So when you talk about using technology to engage talent, a lot of focus on well-being of employees. How is that being done? There's a complete shift in terms of mindfulness sessions, virtual workouts, all of those things where organizations are going that extra mile to invest in people. And another part of just the last piece of when I talk about, as I spoke about reimagine, I would also say the shift that we're seeing in terms of using technology for thought leadership as well as use of virtual events. We have seen 120% increase in content aiming to drive webinar promotions across APAC. And that's just, I'm talking about the last 3 months. And I would say overall virtual events, engagement with people, and like these are the few things over and above what we've already heard from the other panelists, I would say, that we're seeing as trends at the moment.
Great. So, quite interesting, the 3 R's, which is respond, recover, and, reimagine. So quite interesting topic that. And then you gave a, wonderful statistics, like 130% increase on more time on the learning, which is mind-boggling. And 346% increase in the post recommendation side. That's also, so, but clearly there's a shift, clearly there's a shift, which is, coming up in this. And the stats only tell. So the data which you are telling, that tells that. So in interest of time, let's do one thing. So we have limited time left. I would just want to pick any one of your brains on what is it which comes to your mind when we say that we need to be digitally ready to leapfrog to this level. So because we different panelists spoke about different things, and then we starting from digital to automation to new experience to cultural change to the the stats which you gave, Ruchi. So there are many things which we heard, but in a very short, let's say one liner, if we have to say, what do you think would be that one word which comes to your mind when we say that yes, we are digital ready to take this to a new level? Anyone? Yeah.
If I can just say 2 words, I would say adaptable. I mean, it's just about being adaptable and resilient in this point of time, in terms of how we being resilient towards being digital ready. I think it's very, very important because the work environment is evolving at such a fast pace, and organizations are prioritizing reskilling and their workforce to stay in business. So I would say like 2 words: adaptable as well as resilient.
Yeah, and Pramod.
I think just continue on to what Ruchi said. I think agility is, needed in our systems that we offer to our employees, and I think we have to really leverage that today's workforce has had varying degrees of experiences in working with computer systems, mobile applications. So if you can give them flexibility and agility in using those tools, and tools that make the most of what you're offering, rather than imagining that everything that they need you can offer out of the box. If the toolkit is available with them, then they're experienced enough and they're willing to learn to use the tools to create what they need from these tools and these systems.
And I totally agree. So adaptable, resilient, agility, flexibility.
I would say unlearning and learning.
Very important point. Very, very important point. I totally agree with you. To learn how to unlearn. This is a I love this quote. So learn how to unlearn. So yes.
In fact, I was about to come with that kind of.
To my mind.
Yeah.
Wait, Shaakun.
No, after you. Please go ahead.
Okay. My take would be that reimagine the processes and stop thinking about the place and time.
Great. So reimagine the process. Yes, this is also one of the great strategic input which in strategy we give it to clients. So yes, I totally agree, Jitendra. Yes.
So I have got 2 yardsticks of saying that the organization is truly resilient and truly future ready from a digital perspective. One, everything that can be digitized must be digitized. Okay. Second, your digital applications are able to invoke empathy and compassion in the culture and the way of working. That's when you are truly there.
Great. So this is also a great point. And very quickly, if I say, what as per you would be the 1 or 2 most critical skills which these millennials or new behavioral people they need to learn or for that matter learn to unlearn for taking this digital ready environment. So pick 1 or 2 sentences.
I would actually put it this way. Looks like fuddy-duddy thought process, but in fact, in my case, I would say it is really relevant. Despite of all advancement and all technologies and all digitalization and all new ways of working, new normal, innovation and everything, discipline should always be there.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is something which the millennials have to slightly work on.
Mm-hmm. So the
compromise on the discipline, because that's the basic thread of any organization. Even the most advanced one also, who are purely digital and there is no physical space there.
So Jitendra, you are giving a hint that we have gone old now. So
you're talking about yourself, Feroz.
Just kidding.
Since we are talking,
good point.
Since we are talking, since we are talking about growing old, I would say that to my mind, mindfulness is that one skill that not only millennials but everybody needs to think. Yes. With this overload of digital and technology, I think mindfulness is something we gotta go back to.
Briefly.
Yeah.
I would just go back to what Shaakun had said earlier, and empathy. I think in the current times is very, very important. Specifically, when you have both spouses working from home, children studying at home, in a small house possibly, there would be sound, there would be needs to take breaks at a particular point of time. Empathy is very important.
Yeah. Totally agree with you.
I totally agree. I think I think practice a little bit of slowing down so you can come to terms with the new environment, and don't worry about productivity as much in my mind, but worry about I think can we really give back to society? I think this is the time when you have to think about beyond yourself.
Yeah.
So slowing down, observe, and do what is right.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, very true. So, how, Jyoti, are we there?
Ivan should be back.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
I think the panel was fantastic. Given the quality of discussions, I think you'll have preempted all the questions and have answered all the questions because we don't have any questions.
Oh, great.
So I think that was a fantastic panel discussion. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for all the insights that you shared, your experiences. And also a big thank you to Feroz Khan for moderating this panel so adroitly and so effectively. Thank you very much, everybody.